because they're on a roll. But bump. Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, they are. They're doing some absolutely incredible, phenomenal things right now, and clearly, people are starting to notice things. Now, listen, I don't like to throw, like, people look at, anytime you have a different take on something, right? Everybody wants to throw the word conspiracy theory and tinfoil hat and all that kind of stuff, and I don't want to get into it too much, but I'm prevalent on Twitter. I love Twitter. You know, it's my go-to social media. It's just a fun way to interact. You can interact with fans. You can have gaming discussion, even haters. It doesn't really matter. But the interesting part to me anyway, or the most interesting part, is that on Twitter during the pandemic, and I'm not here to argue the severity of the pandemic or whatever, but if you had mentioned something about, you know, you could still catch COVID even if you're vaccinated, right? Or that people die with COVID even if you're vaccinated. You used to get banned for that on Twitter, right? And then it came out officially by the government that yes, indeed, people indeed, that was happening. So those people that used to say that would get labeled conspiracy theorists, and I always thought that was kind of foolish. Conspiracy theory. Like, do you know where the conspiracy theory came up? It didn't even come up until after the JFK assassination. A little interesting tidbit, and that's what they used to use to describe people that tried to say that there was some kind of something other than a lone gunman. Which, as we know, that's just nonsense, right? They use that term to maybe discredit and make people look foolish. It's stupid, but a lot of people were saying, there's a little something going on with Sony and this whole Activision thing, and now we got a little bit of an announcement. Could be interesting. What's up, everybody? Crap Gamer here with Crap Gamer Reviews, your friendly neighborhood reviewer. Back with another video. Thank you so much for checking it out. Give me a good thumb and like the video. Thumb the hell out of it. I would appreciate it. Try to get 100 likes on each of the videos that I do. Very small goal, but it's a goal that I'm trying to reach nonetheless. So if you could help me out, that would be phenomenal, and I'd be very grateful. So Microsoft welcomes the investigation into Sony's anti-competitive tactics in Japan. The Xbox maker says it deserves discussion for sure. Now, I talked about this a little bit previously, but yeah, it's interesting. I think Sony might have absolutely kind of bitten off more they can chew and drawn a little bit too much attention to themselves, right? So if we look at what's going on, I feel like that's something that really seems to be the case here. They draw, unwanted attention to themselves, and it kind of just makes them look a little bit, suspect would be the word. I don't want to just 100% and go, oh, well, it's this or that or this. But, as far as I can tell, it does seem to me like they are kind of looking at this in a way that I maybe wouldn't have expected, and thankfully, rightfully so, the government is saying, Sony's sitting there complaining about Microsoft and this and that and the other thing, when in fact, Sony themselves have very much a hold on the market, the entire market in Japan. And whether that's, I'm not sure exactly what 100% of that would be, but it's very interesting nonetheless. And so Microsoft coming out and saying they back this is very smart. Last week, you may remember the story that's going around that the U.S. Senator claiming that Sony has a monopoly of 98% of the high games market in Japan, and the story has evolved substantially over the last few days. Axios is reporting that 11 members of Congress are concerned that Sony is unfairly hurting Xbox in Japan, which again centers around this imbalanced Japanese game market. Here's what one of the letters signed by 4 members of Congress had to say about PlayStation's conduct in the country. And I quote, "Our understanding is that the Japanese government tolerates a range of exclusivity conduct or exclusionary conduct by their domestic companies that may violate Japanese and Japan's antitrust laws, and that this in action by Japanese government harms the ability of the U.S. companies to compete in its country. We understand that Sony, which holds 98% of the high-end market, pays third-party game publishers not to make their content available on Xbox and systematically negotiates exclusivity arrangements to keep the most popular games in Japan off Xbox," which again, it begs the question if you think about it, right? And before you go, well, what about Nintendo or what about mobile? They very cleverly, very cleverly call it the high-end market. Why? Because that's what the CMA and the FTC and all these governing bodies broke it down to when it comes to Xbox and PlayStation. They're not counting Nintendo, they're not counting mobile, they're not counting PC. High-end gaming consoles, which there's only the two. And so they're saying, hey, Sony is literally paying developers in Japan to keep their games off of Xbox. This is a big deal, and this continues to be a big deal. This also mentioned in one of the letters that this imbalance could be violating the spirit of the US-Japan Digital Trade Agreement, which calls for non-discriminatory treatment of digital products. Axios says that although Microsoft isn't saying just how involved it was in orchestrating the push, the outlet understands that Microsoft government affairs team has discussed their issues with members of Congress. And here's what a Microsoft spokesperson had to say, and I quote, "Sony's anti-competitive tactics deserve discussion, and we welcome further investigation to ensure a level playing field in the video game industry." So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next, and we definitely haven't heard the last of this. But yeah, how crazy is that to think that right now Microsoft was like, hey, all this stuff is going on, and everybody's talking about us buying Activision, and then, you know what, it's just crazy to me to think that, you know, this is the type of stuff that's happening, and now they kind of turned it around and they're like, hey, you know, 2 can play that game, and that's 100% sure how that should be done as well. 2 should be playing that game, because you know what, at the end of the day, at the end of the freaking day, Sony gets away with literally everything when it comes to this stuff, right? And you know, to me, that's just really unfortunate and should be out of bounds, in my opinion. You know, it's just one of those things that I'm looking at and I'm going, this is sort of insane to think that Microsoft is actually able to kind of get Sony back a little bit. I mean, there should be some kind of perks to it, right? Something, I guess. You know, and you know, here we go. You know, I hope we see something come from this, you know, like, you know, like, I know people are going, Microsoft is super petty. Well, look what Sony did. They lied to regulators. Sony's been the most petty group ever, with Jim Ryan stating he didn't care about a new Call of Duty deal. He wanted to block the deal overall. That's insanity, right? And if you want to get petty on Microsoft, why can't Microsoft get petty on you? That's exactly what should be happening. You know, it's crazy, absolutely crazy, to think that that's sort of the world we live in. Anyway, you know, it's kind of crazy to think, but yeah, it's crazy. It needed to happen. So, anyway, I would love to hear what everybody else thinks about this. It's awesome to see people kind of talking about all this stuff. Rack 'em up, fact 'em up, Crap Gamer 'em up. Thanks for watching. Crap Gamer out.